Hey NYC, if I haven't gotten the chance to meet you, my name is Angela Elam. I am a youth director in Forney, and I'm excited to be able to speak with you today and to share with you today. And so we're going to actually be talking about Moses. And so if you weren't here on Sunday, I'd encourage you, go back and watch the sermon. AC and Sandra both did such a good job talking about the very beginning of Moses' life and from his mom's perspective and how letting go can be hard for us. So again, I'd encourage you to go back and watch that. It's not something that you want to miss. They did so good. As I said, today we're going to be talking about Moses. So I want to walk us through his life a little bit, paraphrase real quick, up into the point where we're going to be talking about today. So like I said, Moses' mom put him in a basket and sent him down a river. That's what we talked about on Sunday. And it was because Pharaoh at the time was declaring that Hebrew baby boys were going to be killed. He was afraid of them rising up. So this awful thing was happening, and Moses' mom wanted to protect him. So she put him in this basket, sent him down the river, right? Scary. Like, I would be terrified. Well, Moses' sister follows along the basket, is watching it, keeping an eye out, and God leads the basket to Pharaoh's daughter. And Pharaoh's daughter finds him in the river and takes him and declares that this is her baby now. And since Moses' sister was following along, she goes up to Pharaoh's daughter and says, "Hey, do you want me to have a Hebrew woman take this baby and nurse him for you?" Again, we talked about this on Sunday, so you may remember some of it. And Pharaoh's daughter is like, yes, that would be great. And so then Moses' mom actually gets to have him back and nurse him for a while, raise him a bit more. And then he is taken back to Pharaoh's daughter and raised in that household. And so never knowing that that was his mom, and probably never even remembering her, he's raised amongst these Egyptians. Well, fast forward until he's a grown person, and Moses defends a Hebrew slave against an Egyptian guard and kills the guard. So now he's like, oh my gosh, I just killed somebody. Like, I gotta bolt. So Moses runs, leaves Egypt, is on the run, scared, probably looking behind his back, like, what if they come after me? Gone. He ends up finding another group of people. He settles down, he gets married, he becomes a shepherd, living a chill life, thinking, that's all behind me now, probably, right? Well, let's now put ourselves in Moses' shoes, how he was probably feeling around this time that we're picking up this story. So I'm like, if I was Moses, I would be feeling a lot of confusion about my history. I mean, he doesn't know why his parents abandoned him. He doesn't know where his real parents even are, if they're alive, if they're dead. He doesn't know anything about them, if he has siblings, anything. He's probably angry at them. He's probably angry at his adoptive parents too. He's probably angry at the world for Hebrews even being slaves in the first place. He's probably hurt. He probably feels abandoned. He probably feels anxious, looking behind his back, scared that these Egyptians are going to come after him, that somebody's going to find him or recognize him. Anxious just that things are going to go wrong at any point because his life has not been super chill and cool up until this point. He's had some rough patches. He probably feels lonely. He's married now, but he doesn't have siblings. He doesn't have parents. He probably wonders why his life is like this. He probably has so many questions for God. On top of all of that, he feels guilty. He took somebody else's life, even in defense of a Hebrew slave. He killed somebody and ran. He probably feels shameful. So this is the Moses that we're looking at today. Not a perfect prophet, not a perfect speaker, but somebody that was confused and anxious and scared and angry and guilty. This is the Moses that God calls to save his people. Not a Moses who had it all together, but a Moses that was broken. Which leads me to my first point. It's you are God's kind of ready. You are God's kind of ready. A lot of times God calls us to do something and we're like, God, like, I'm broken. I don't have my crap together. Like, I just lied yesterday, or I'm too confused. I'm too anxious. Like, I have to take medicine. Like, God, I'm feeling depressed. Like, I don't see the point in life. Like, God, like, I'm guilty and I'm lonely and I'm sad or I'm angry and like frustrated. All of these different things that we could be feeling, God sees and says, hey, you are ready. That does not hold you back from doing what I'm calling you to do, from following me. You are God's kind of ready. We tend to make excuses. We like to make excuses and say, God, I'm anxious. Like, I don't like talking to people. Like, I don't want to have to talk to strangers. I feel that where I'm like, I don't want to have to call somebody random and call a stranger and be on the phone with them and like to do anything. Like, and so it can be stressful. What's funny enough is Moses felt that way too. He didn't want to talk to people. In Exodus 6, God is calling him. God is saying, hey, Moses, follow me. Hey, Moses, go. Tell Pharaoh to free my people. Like, do this. It's a huge thing. It's a huge moment. And Moses is saying all of these excuses. Time after time after time, he's like, well, God, like, I'm not good enough. God, I'm not ready. God, I can't do this. I can't do this. And in 6:12 of Exodus, it says, Moses answered God, look, the Israelites won't even listen to me. How do you expect Pharaoh to? Besides, I stutter. He's like, hey, I stutter. Like, I can't talk in front of people. Like, I get too scared. I get too anxious. Like, I don't want to have to do this. Like, I can't even talk to like slaves and fellow people. Like, and you want me to go talk to like the head honcho out there? Like the boss? Like, I don't know what you're talking about, but he's like, God, I can't do that. And what's great and what really gives me peace is that even though Moses is anxious, God doesn't fault him for it. Moses is scared. Moses wants to say no, but God doesn't hold that against him. God simply says, you're ready. Watch me provide. Watch me make a way. I know you're ready for this. You're my kind of ready for this. Not by human standards, but by God's standards. I've got you. He just asks us to follow. He just asks Moses to follow him and put himself out there. Which leads me to my second point. Do not wait for your kind of ready. Do not wait for your kind of ready, for our kind of ready, for people's standards where you have to be perfect before you can get a job, where you have to be perfect before you can move forward and grow. That's not how God is. God is not saying, hey, you have to meet my mark. You have to meet all of these different checklists. You don't have to do all of these different things to be ready for God. God is saying, hey, you can be broken and I can still use you. Even when you're broken, I will fill in the empty spaces. I will make up for all of the shortcomings. You're anxious, I'll provide. Whenever Moses said, I can't talk to him, I have a stutter, God ended up providing Moses' own biological brother, Aaron, who could speak. And so he went with Moses everywhere. And he spoke on Moses' behalf at points. God provided, God came through because Moses followed. Don't wait to be your kind of ready, to be human standard kind of ready. Just follow, just go. Exodus 12:40, 6 chapters later, it says the Israelites had lived in Egypt 430 years. At the end of the 430 years, to the very day, God's entire army left Egypt. All of God's people left Egypt. And some of the Egyptians went with them too. They got to leave after being in slavery for 4 centuries. Generation upon generation upon generation. Imagine if your mom and their mom and their mom and their mom, if all of them had been in the same place and you finally got to break out of a generational curse. You finally got to move a mountain. You finally got to reach your dream. You finally made a difference and are free. Thousands were saved because one man followed God, because one man followed what God was calling him to do despite not being ready. The Moses that went into Egypt and spoke to Pharaoh, the Moses that went into Egypt, the Moses that split the Red Sea, the Moses that performed all of the amazing works on God's behalf, was broken. We don't know what his alone moments looked like. He could have went home and had an anxiety attack at one point. He could have had days where he felt depressed and weighted and lonely. He could have had moments where he was angry at God for calling him and putting that responsibility on him. He could have had all of these different moments, but he followed and a change was made. Lives were saved. He didn't have to be perfect for it. When I was in high school, God challenged me with giving me one of my friends' names and saying, hey, my friend Emerald wasn't a Christian, but she and I were close and I cared about her. I loved her. We were good friends. She was a great person, but she didn't believe in God and she didn't know how to be loved. And every time I was scared of sharing my faith, every time I said, God, I can't follow this, he challenged me with, are you just going to let her not know me? Are you going to let her stay stuck? In one of my favorite songs, there's a lyric, and it's supposed to be from God's perspective, and it says, you were on lockdown and I hold the key. God is saying, you feel locked up, you feel chained, but I have this key. And even from our perspective, saying, hey, we know God, we have the key. We can't hold it to ourselves. We can't leave our people behind. Moses ran and he was safe and he had a family and he had sheep. He was living his life. But God said, you cannot leave your people behind. You cannot leave my people behind. Go and get them. You are ready. You are God's kind of ready, which is the only kind of ready that matters. So don't leave your friends behind, your family behind. Do what Moses did. Step out. When God tells you to speak to somebody, speak to them. When God calls you to follow him, follow him. When he challenges you with something, grow. Let yourself be grown. Let yourself change. Don't let you hold yourself back. Don't let anybody else hold yourself back. Let yourself grow. Let God change you and change other lives because of that. We have a responsibility to love the people around us. And if we truly love them, we can't leave them alone in darkness. We can't leave them alone in that, even whenever we're struggling with brokenness, even when we're struggling with all of these different feelings, all of these different struggles, and we feel lost. God can still use us and he'll still use you. That's one of the great things about the story of Moses.